Lawrence, are we studying Agile too much versus doing Agile?
I know I am. Yeah.
Oh
I have to
yeah?
admit that. I have to admit that straight at the bat. I read everything, man. I
Do
even
you?
started listening to this awesome podcast that for some
Yeah, which one's
reason
that?
I am
Yeah.
currently on, right? Well, at least
Isn't that
on
neat?
that's a badass agile podcast. It was really the one that actually told me to stop studying and started to do something, which is why I particularly like this topic now because I
Okay, good.
am that target audience. I read
So
everything. I study
so
everything.
why do you do that? I'm curious.
Um, I've read everything since I learned to read, right? So I have like this
Yeah.
reading addiction. I read the milk carton. I read like penny novels. I read and therefore when I started to like really love and dig Agile, I read everything I could find about Agile, and I have an insatiable reading hunger, which, to be honest, I think is good. But there is a
Hmm,
dark side to it, and
there
I'm
is.
guessing
What's the dark side?
that's where we're going,
Yeah.
right?
What do you think the
Yeah.
dark side is?
Well, what I think you'll tell me is that the dark side of reading is that you can do too much of it and then
Yeah.
forget to do anything with all that knowledge. And
Right.
I do have to admit that's a thing that I sort of do. For
Oh
example,
yeah.
I know, I know a lot, and I mean a lot about value-based pricing and how to sell.
Mhm.
Haven't sold anything though, right? And
Mm.
that is bad. That's
Right.
where you are in the dark side because then it becomes just an excuse. Yeah, yeah. If I
Yeah.
read this book, if I get this little sliver of knowledge in, then I'll be confident enough to finally do it and then learn that the book was nonsense, even though it was written
Right.
very well, right?
Right.
It's really good to take a few good ideas that you get from books or podcasts or whatever and just try them out.
So
That
there's
part
something
should be in
important.
there.
Yeah, there's something important about what you said there, is that we often will use knowledge as an excuse to procrastinate. If I just knew a little more, if I just heard it from one more person, that would build up some kind of certification or validity in my mind that this is the right way forward. When in truth, the only way to find the right way forward is to go do it. So books can teach you everything except the last and most important step, which is the courage to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my one problem with studying. I also have this built-in, baked-in belief that, they used to say when we were kids, those who can't do, those who can't teach, which is awful because I spend most of my time as an instructor.
Yeah, me
But as
too.
an instructor, I like to document my process. I like to show people what I did and then form that into a set of principles that are simple to apply. So most of what I teach is not memorize this, then memorize this, and then let's assemble the pieces of the puzzle. Is like, here are the simple fundamentals. Go drill on those so that you can have more confidence when you're live in game, in the court of play. So I like to think I don't break my own rules, but I don't know. Maybe I do. Do we spend too much time learning? Here's what I know. CEOs, they say CEOs read something like, I can't remember if it's 30 times more books than the average person in a year.
Mm-hmm.
But most CEOs don't read the whole book. They'll read a summary because what they're looking for is not all the filler words in between that make a great idea a 300-page tome. They're looking for the great ideas
Yep.
that
And
are nestled
that's
in the text.
And that's what makes the successful CEO, right? Because there's thousands of CEOs that do not distinguish themselves too much. And then there's these few that you read about in Harvard Business Review and books
Yeah,
and that everybody knows. Like wherever you are in the world, everybody knows Elon Musk, everybody knows Bill Gates, or those kinds
right,
of people. I'm
right,
not
right,
saying
right.
they're nice people, by the way. I'm just
Mhm.
saying they're really successful. And one of the things that makes them successful is reading tons of books. But doing something with them as well. And that is the part that we must
Right.
never forget, at least in my opinion. That also sometimes the better way to read a book is in reverse, right? So first act,
Mhm.
figure out what you're running into and then ask
Mhm.
somebody, I have this problem. Do you have a book tip for me? And then read the summary. That's
Right.
that's the thing that Marianne taught me because
Yeah.
that's how she does it. She
Right.
just does something, figures
Mhm.
out, something apparently is lacking here. I need to this thing. Is there
Right.
something to fix that?
Right.
And then, of course, sometimes she comes to me, and then I tell her, "Yeah, there are 5 books on that." And that was what made me realize the truth of what you're telling here, because I know that there are 5 books on that, but I'm not doing what she's doing.
Mhm.
So the doing is much more important than the knowing how to do.
Right. Right. So knowing is not enough. You
No.
have all of this knowledge and you can recite it to other people. And I think that's why we come up with the those who can do, those who can't teach, is because teachers know the material cold, but they have never done it. So they can never actually encourage people, get off your butt, get yourself accountable, find an accountability partner, do what you say what you mean, right? Make a plan and
Mm-hmm.
either get it done or tell people you can't get it done before the due date. Like the basic fundamentals that, in my mind, make Agile spin, you can only learn by doing, reading about it and going, yeah, that makes sense. That
I
sounds
would argue that there is a place for, at least I hope fervently that there is a place for teaching, because I love to do that.
Mhm.
But it's better to teach if you've done, and it's even better to teach if you're still doing. Uh, and I know a lot of really great teachers who do exactly that. So they'll spend the better part of their time teaching other people how to do what they're doing, right? Not what they
Mhm.
have done, but what they're still doing. So they
Yep.
have real life examples that are from a week ago, not from 15 years
That's
back.
right. That's right.
And that I love in a really good teacher. That's what I try to emulate in my own teaching.
Mhm.
And that's also, come to think of it, how I decided to become a teacher, because in the doing also you see a distinguishable thing that you're awesome at. And for me,
Yes.
it just happens to be teaching people. That's really something that I'm pretty good at.
There's a countervailing theory to what I believe about teachers and their ability. And that is one of the fastest ways to grow as you're learning something is to go teach others.
Yes.
So start mentoring
Oh,
immediately because it forces you to listen to and ask the questions that for whatever reason you're blind to. Do you have that experience as well?
yeah, I can't agree with you more, because that's exactly my experience. Whenever I started teaching immediately while learning something that I thought was worth learning, I was learning it way faster, being way better as a teacher, by the way, because I still understood what was difficult about it. And therefore, I was able to shave off literal like years of a normal learning curve and then help
Mhm,
others do the same.
mhm.
That, I think, is what we're after here. So it's not that you
Yeah.
shouldn't teach, it's not that you shouldn't read, but it's that you should always combine that with the actual doing of the thing that you're teaching and reading about, because it's that combination that not just makes it powerful, but makes it fast, makes it
Yeah.
result oriented, and makes it badass.
And now it raises the question. We talked about this in Too Many Books last week. We spoke about how many books are on the shelves to sell books. We assume that because a book exists, it's there to enlighten and improve. And at the end of the day, it's there to sell books. If we can get people to buy this thing, then it's a good book. But there's very little attention to, does this offer something valuable? Because sellable and valuable are often very different things, as we know. So I'm wondering about the quality when we talk about, we hear the topic is specifically studying agile. Maybe we shouldn't be studying concepts and philosophies as much as we should be looking at case studies of how'd you do it? How did you break through that barrier where people were, for example, resisting? How did you get a board of directors for a 100 or 200-year-old company to stop thinking the way we've always done things and start thinking about new ways of going? If you've been successful, to me, that's the value in reading or studying or taking multiple courses in agility or any subject is, what do they all tell me in common? What are the valuable nuggets that have some sense of universal truth to them? Does that or could that impact the way you study or learn?
I think it definitely could, Chris. And I don't think you're just on to something there. I think you just spoke real truth there that people can not just use, but should heed effectively. Because a lot of us get sucked down and in the corners of the books that we read, in the corners of the how-tos, in the corners
Mhm.
of the online discussions, instead of in the actual doing of the thing and the studying of how that was done. So indeed, case studies, but then not case studies that you read on websites by large consulting firms, because that's a different kind of case study that's mostly designed to teach you that that's an awesome consulting firm. And that has a function, but really the case studies that you find maybe in the better courses that are out there. But honestly, the case studies you find when you go, for example, on Clubhouse and you discuss what happened and you actually have a conversation like this is the time when I did this and then that happened. And because I read it in that book and that actually is nice information. This is how I tried to do that and I failed miserably because 7 important lessons you can apply tomorrow. And that I think is the better way also to just exchange knowledge. Much more powerful that way than just writing it down.
I think, what is it about the temptation that you see in so many online education opportunities? There's so much free stuff out there, whether it's YouTube videos or forums or communities, where when you see how people react to this kind of information, they say, how do I do this? So it's almost like I hear a lot of permission-based thinking. Like, is it okay to have a stand-up at noon? Well, you can do whatever you want. In fact, I encourage you to do whatever you want and see if it works. It's the best way to learn. But I see so much permission-based thinking where people are like, just tell me the answers. There's like an anointed answer. And here's another piece of classical wisdom about teaching someone to fish, right? So I can give you a fish or I can teach you how to fish and then you're covered. Now you know how to do, you don't need me. You don't need me to give you the answers, because when you give people an answer, then they say, great, what's next? Or what happens if the right person isn't in the room, or the right conditions don't exist, or the thermostat says it's 71 when it's supposed to be 70? Now everything's thrown out of sorts for you, and you got to go ask another question, another permission-based question, to get the script you're supposed to run, or the acts that you're supposed to follow in the sequence that you're supposed to follow them. I don't think that's learning.
No, I think though it's still, even though it's not learning, it's logical that people do that, because when you teach somebody to fish, most people will discover that they hate fishing, right? But they still want the fish. So therefore, that's why they're asking. And they're not actually asking you to teach them how to fish. They just want the fish already, preferably with chips in a nice wrapped package that's easily consumable. And sometimes that is okay, right? So it's not bad to ask for, how do I do this? However, I do agree. There is a lot of permission-based thinking, and I think that also holds over from, well, the not too distant past. Whenever you showed your own initiative, when you did what you thought was right, it was frowned upon, and therefore you could be ostracized from the group, and that was just a bad thing. And I think that is like a deeply systemic thing that is still there, even in the Agile community that prides itself in independent thinking, but still. There's so much infighting in the Agile community about what Agile is that just proves this point, right? So
I just threw something
into
a whole
episode on that.
We will. So I threw something in the backlog this morning, thinking about you and doing these videos on the topic of Agile is formless, meaning it has no predictable shape. Therefore, it has no prescription. Therefore, get comfortable with the fluidity and start using your own imagination. So maybe that's one we can do in the upcoming weeks. But I had a question for you. How then, when someone's coming into the marketplace as a newly minted Scrum Master, newly interested in agility, you know, we're getting old, the new guard has got to be coming up. How would you recommend they go and learn? What's the best way to get an education and to get your growth in if you're just starting out?
To be really honest, at the moment, I say just try something. But try to just think what would work, experiment with it, and then based on the result that you're getting, then look up, did somebody else get this result? Is there a way to make this better? Because then now you know what you're improving. And in Agile, it's all about continuous improvement. So try something first, see if that works. If it doesn't, try something else. If it does, try more of it, but always on your reflection. I think that's the main thing that I would actually teach. Teach that it's important to stand still a little, reflect on what you've just done, and then based on that reflection, figure out what's next. And that is where reading and or watching videos and or calling the podcaster that you love or whatever, to figure out what else you could try, just to be inspired because you're already doing something. I think that also will make it easier to not fall into the trap of thinking, I just need to learn a little more about this before I keep on trying, because you have already begun. And I think that is the main challenge for most people, to begin at all. And especially for somebody who's newly minted, they run a real risk of thinking, yeah, I know that I'm a Scrum Master, but I've only just begun. Mm-hmm. So let's not push that too much, right? So let's accept the fact that I've only just begun. And I think, hell no, just have at it. Really dive into it, learn fast. It's way more fun that way. And you don't have to be arrogant about it or cocky about it or just do stupid stuff because you've just begun. But when you've just begun, it's okay to still do stupid stuff because everybody knows you've just begun. So that's a faster way to learn.
So I would add to that and say, I think in the Forge, one of the things that we do is say, here's some principles. Now go do this with your teams and report back what happened, and report with your swim buddy. How did this fall for you? I think that's important. What you said was, what I heard you say was that find learning experiences that, yes, teach fundamentals, because I don't want to discredit certification courses. I just don't like the fact that they use the word certify, because certify means to be able to attest to your capacity, your goodness, or your qualification in something, which is impossible to do in such a short period of time with so little interaction. But education courses are different. If they just took the word certify out of there, I'd be a lot happier with many of the public offerings, because more knowledge is never bad. And I especially appreciate that they're trying to condense it into smaller and smaller experiences so that we're unpacking, hopefully we're removing the filler, right? All meat, all chicken, no feathers. So I like the idea of an experience that encourages you to say, here are the fundamentals and the principles. Now go do and prove these out. Do these work for you? Did they require more courage than you felt like you had in the moment? Then come back and reflect on all of those things. And bonus points if you found an education provider or a book or a resource that lets you interact and say, here's what happened. What did I maybe do wrong? Can you give me some feedback? Can you help coach me through getting better? Those are the kinds of experiences why when we built the Forge, it's classroom once a week, but it's also coaching once a week or once every 2 weeks on how did this land for you? How did we make this real for you? Did it give you more courage? Did people respond to you differently? Did you get the job offer that you wanted? Did you get the respect, results, or whatever that you were desperately hoping for? Those things make a difference. So we live in such a great time where all of these education experiences and knowledge transfer can be done electronically in the moment, but also can be done in the real. The communication can keep going. In university, we finished a course, it was over. You know, you couldn't really go back to your prof at any point and say, question about lecture number 12. It was kind of one and done. And now we have so many more options. So I would say chase down education experiences that allow you to learn fundamentals, but don't wait too long before bringing it to the field, doing, trying, failing, reflecting, and then adjusting, hopefully with a coach, and then continuing to grow.
Definitely.
That's my throwdown. So with that, Lawrence, what do you got going on? Anything to promote or any place we should point people to go and check out your work or what you're working on?
Well, main thing to promote today would be Scrum Day Europe. I'm on that side of the pond. And that's looking to be a really nice, awesome online event. So it's widely attendable, right? So you don't have to be in Europe to attend it.
Right.
And I'm liking the speaker lineup, mostly also because I'm one of them.
You're one of them.
But it's really going to be an awesome event, and it's the one where those experiences that we talked about in this on this call, that's exactly how most of those presenters share their knowledge.
Yes,
that's what I like.
Awesome. For me, it's the same old stuff, guys. You can check out the podcast at badassagile.com, but also go on Instagram and look for us at Badass Agile. There's a Facebook Badass Agile Listener Lounge. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You just got to search for Badass Agile. And if you're listening to the podcast these days, why not try the new Shuffle app, where you can engage with other fans and myself socially as you listen to the episode. Let's check that experience out. Lawrence, I want to say thank you very much for joining me today. I always love these discussions.
Thank you, sir.
And we're going to see you guys next time.